Welcome back to the Football Fitness Federation podcast. This is episode 148. I'm delighted to welcome onto the podcast Louis Langdown. Louis, how are you?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Ben.
Good stuff, mate. Thank you very much for coming on. I know we've got quite a bit to cover in the podcast, so we'll dive into it. But start us off, mate. Your career so far. I've not mentioned any roles or anything like that. I think we're going to dive into that in a second. But do you want to just take us through your career and give us some of the jobs that you've been involved in?
Yeah, sure. I mean, this might take a while, Ben. I'm fairly old. So I started in 2004 with a company called Prozone. You might have heard of it. They're sort of pioneers, really, in the world of data analysis, and especially in football and rugby. And that was my first job after graduating, and as an analyst. So match analyst was my first role, and got the consultant gig at Crystal Palace. Spent a couple of years there as an analyst, and then transitioned from analyst to S&C coach, to head of S&C, before leaving Palace in around about 2009. So worked under a few managers there, and some great players and some really nice people. And then went to do my MSc in biomechanics and changed slightly my career. Got a coaching gig with Solent in football, and then had a job as a strength and conditioning coach with the EIS as a part-time gig. Got back into football with AFC Bournemouth as head of sports science after a brief stint at Southampton Football Club as under-18 strength and conditioning coach. And then spent a couple of years at Bournemouth before getting the sack, as you inevitably do in football, or gardening leave, they might call it these days, when the managerial change happened. And then ended up at Portsmouth pretty much immediately after that as fitness coach, and carried on with the academic side of my career, really. I've been at Solent University now in an official capacity since 2009 as an associate lecturer, but full-time lecturer 2015 when I left full-time football. I'm now a course leader in football science and sports science and performance. And I combine that with my assistant manager role at Weymouth.
Yeah, brilliant.
That's pretty much most of it.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And in terms of that transition, so from analyst to what now is your assistant manager role at Weymouth, what was, especially from analyst to like sports science, what was the reason for that? Or was it just trying to cover different roles, or was it what was available?
Well, it's a combination of all, I think, Ben. I mean, at Crystal Palace at the time, under Simon Jordan's tenure, and Ian Dowie was the manager, and I absolutely loved analysis, loved it. We were talking football all the time, and the most important thing for me is that I understood football and I could talk to Ian on a level of football, and I found that the biggest learning curve. And from there, I thought I could probably make more impact on the grass. It was funny because back then in 2005, 2006, everything was quite laborious in analysis. We're working off videotapes and so on, and having to digitize and then come back. And the internet connection at Copus Cope wasn't the greatest. So there was always issues around how efficient the product was, although the product was great, and it was a real eye-opener for me. And I loved the physical data that came from it. I loved the objective data that came from it. I loved being able to help and support the players in terms of feedback. I just didn't want to be in a room on my own. And I was in that a laptop on your own, four walls, cracking out as much data as you possibly could. And as luck would have it, in that position, a really great guy called John Harbin was the fitness coach, an Australian. And he was kind of a mentor for Ian, I think, Ian Dowie, in that respect, in terms of holistic programming and so on. And he was really, really good. And I just warmed to him massively. I knew I could learn. S&C was still a big thing in my eyes, from my undergrad to moving forward. I was reasonably fit back then, and I took a big interest in it. So I took the FA Fitness Trainers Award on top of being an analyst, and that then opened my eyes up massively. At the time, the FA put on that. It was a fantastic course, costly, but a fantastic course. And I met loads of people on there, which I just buzzed off, and I thought it was brilliant. And I thought I could make more of an impact on the grass. And that's all it was. I thought, how do I get enjoyment, and how do I make more impact? And I thought as a fitness coach, I could do that. Started combining the roles as analyst with the under 18s, because believe it or not, they didn't have a fitness coach at the time. And we're talking 2006, and they didn't have a fitness coach. They had some wonderful players in there. And now you look at Crystal Palace, it's a fantastic football club in terms of development. And Gary Issuk came on board, who's still there now as the academy manager. And I supported that. And I found that was better for me personally, and I enjoyed it. And I didn't see where analysis was going at the club. I didn't see it at the time. There was only one analyst, that was me. And I didn't see it growing, but I saw the S&C side growing. So we built a new gym and so on. But really, it's the key people around it. So I had a fellow called Mark Hulse, who was with the FA, and he was brilliant, brilliant in terms of learning. So I stole most of Mark's sessions and currently still use most of Mark's sessions, and it's now 2021. So thank you, Hulsey, for that. But I just enjoyed it more, and that's how I transitioned. And then, in football clubs, what happens? A new manager comes in, some people go, and there seems to be a position available. And Peter Taylor came in, and there was a position available. Neil Warnock came in, and there was a position available. So I took over the head of S&C, sorry, after working sort of a year and a half with the under 18s, and I took that on. And Neil brought an analyst down from Sheffield United, so it kind of fitted. It fitted what the club required, really. I only lasted a season and a bit with Neil, but what a guy. Tremendous man management. And for me, I needed to get home. I had a young family that I'd kind of selfishly left, and that was pulling me back. They were in Southampton, I was in Palace. Not geographically, not too long, you would think, but it is in football when you're the only sort of, there's you and one other in terms of S&C. You've really got to be there for the players. So that was difficult back then. So that was really the transition. And the hardest thing I found was being, I had lots of issues in terms of getting the players' respect quickly. They liked me as a character, as an analyst, no problem, but saw me as the analyst. I had a bit of a, Sean Derry won't mind me saying, we had a bit of a set to one day on the training ground, and it was difficult for me to gain their trust and respect. But when you're confident in what you do, it does happen, and it can happen. You just got to go through with your beliefs, and you've got to go through with communication, really. And in the end, it all became well. It all became good, and I really enjoyed that stint on the grass. But the difficult thing, I suppose, was them seeing me as the S&C coach as opposed to the analyst. That was the difficult thing. I had to convince them with my knowledge and with the sessions, and fingers crossed, I think I did that.
And what do you think
that was pressure, but
no, what do you think their views were on that then? Were they expecting you to be away from the grass, and when you stepped onto the grass, it was something that they weren't used to, weren't expecting? And how did you go about developing that buy-in? Because we talk about buy-in and relationships and communication loads, but as a specific example, obviously disclose whatever you want to disclose, and don't what you don't want to cover. But it'd just be interesting to tap into that, to see that how that relationship changed from them not accepting it initially to creating that buy-in and trust.
Yeah, well, I think to be honest, your character and your personality plays a big part. If you can get, in the first instance, if you can conduct a safe session and an enjoyable session immediately, and for me, it came down to some real basics, like, can I demo what I'm doing in the warm-up? Can I demo what I'm doing with the ball? Am I going to make an idiot of myself? And I could do that reasonably well. I'm not the best footballer by any stretch of the imagination, but I could do that. And I think that in itself, they warmed to me that way. I mean, I'd known a lot of them through good times and bad times in terms of our success on the pitch and off the pitch. So players like Danny Butterfield were really important, Sean Derry, Andrew Johnson, all these players, and Dougie Freedman, Clinton Morrison, the big characters. You suddenly spend time with them one-on-one, and you can tell them how you're going to benefit them. And that's what I did. I spent a lot of time convincing them to take this route in S&C. Come and do these prescription exercises. We had players like Jose Fonte, who was excellent as well for us at the time, who was arrived from Portugal and had a different approach to S&C than the English players, for sure. He was in the gym, prehab, and all these things that are now to a penny. They weren't necessarily back in the day. So introducing them and having buy-in early from the likes of Jose Fonte was really important. And I think if you can control the session, and I hate to use this word, but you've got likability, it helps. I hate to use that word, but in the first instance, it helps. It really does. And then, of course, you've got to have a strong staff. And I think my first pre-season was we were due to go to America with Crystal Palace. It was all sorted, and then Neil, being Neil, changes it to Cornwall. And anyone who's worked with Neil will know that he lives in Lou. So 2 weeks this changed within 2 weeks. So Keith Curl phones me up and says, we've changed everything. Don't worry, don't have to organise anything. It's all sorted, but we're going to Cornwall. And I'm thinking, right, okay, this is my first pre-season. I've really got to impress. And honestly, we turn up on school pitches that are like that. That's the sort of level of gradient we've got. And I'm trying to think, right, I've got to get in this first week, I've got to build up their extensive endurance and so on and so forth. I'm thinking, I'll just go up and down that hill. That will work. But the grass was really long. And then the gaffer turns up halfway through the session. He turns up in his Morgan convertible, driving in, waving at us. And I'm thinking, I'm really not going to, what am I going to do here? How am I going to get these guys on side? But to be fair, strong staff matters. And Keith Curl was excellent with me, and he's excellent with the players. Keith gave me the backing, and the players respected Keith Curl enough to know that if Keith Curl said, get on with it with Louis, get in the gym with Louis, you're doing it. So, and of course, no one went against the gaffer either. So a strong gaffer with a good hold and respect from the players will help you as a practitioner. And it helped me in that instant massively, because they kind of had to do it, Ben. They had to do the sessions with me, and we had a good group, to be honest, and I'm really lucky with that. We had a really good group that could manage themselves and boss themselves, and they wanted to get better, which is key. If you've got that, and you can recruit well, that's the key to it. So that helped me massively.
Yeah. And then was the intention always to go into academia? Because we had a bit of a chat before we started recording, and there seems to be a bit of a trend at the moment. I don't know whether it's just me that sees it, of coaches coming out of the game or out of full-time football, should I say, and either going into academia full-time or doing some part-time work like you do. I know it's a full-time league, and probably feels like a full-time job sometimes as well, but a part-time club.
Yeah, I mean, I can see it happening more. I think, I hate to say it's a young person's game as an early practitioner, but there are chances you'll get burnt out. There really are. You've got to manage your time as a practitioner and your health and your mental well-being better than probably I did. I remember sleeping in my car at Crystal Palace because I couldn't afford to stay up there and still have a property back here, which my partner and children were in. So it was a case of, how do I make this work? And yes, you've got to do that in football, but there comes a point in time where you don't have to continue doing that. And I think most people jump from full-time football or full-time sports practitioner into academia because it's less stressful. It's more, there's more safety within it. You're not likely to lose your job. You don't have to necessarily travel the globe. And if I'm honest, the transition's really easy. It's working with young people, which you do anyway. It's coaching and teaching. There's commonalities throughout. So I just think it's a natural transition. And I would encourage anybody that's thinking about, maybe they're getting to the end of their enjoyment, their fulfillment within a football club or any other sports club, to have a look at academia, because you get the same challenges, which are really great. You get the same dynamics sometimes, with the young people and sharing their journey. For me, I believe in the social cultural aspect of learning. I want to be on their journey. I want to interact, I want to problem solve in authentic ways. So for me, academia allows you to do that. And also, you don't necessarily get the chance to fulfill your educational needs or your desires within education. We want to better ourselves. You don't necessarily get the chance in a football club to do that. The time is difficult. Whereas for me, I wanted to pursue a PhD. I wanted to better understand pedagogy. So for me, it was a natural shift towards academia. And I think others will take that leap. But I don't think they'll leave. If they've got anything like me, they won't leave sport full time, because I think you need to have a foot in both camps to understand the nuances of change. This new generation of practitioners, of footballers, of sports people. You've kind of got to be in it. You leave it for a long time, and you can. And I don't think that's a good way to teach students. I think you need to be in it and walk it, breathe it, to be able to translate. Just my opinion.
Yeah, and obviously I've seen a lot of the great work that you guys are doing down at Solar, and I've seen the recent partnership with Southampton, and obviously some of the practitioners that have worked down there as well, including people like Chris Neville. So you're still involved with a lot of people and the game, aren't you? Like, it's not as if you've stepped away from the game, regardless of the work you're doing at Weymouth. Like, you're still involved.
Yeah, I think that's I think for many that's a great way to do it. And let's think, if we still want the environment, we still want the enjoyment of working in football, because it's a great environment. It really is. When it's going well, it's a great environment, and that's what I tell the students. Get in sport, because sport can take you wherever you want to go, with a bit of luck. But you meet some great people, and it's enjoyable. Competition's great. But I think if you can put your foot in and come out, I mean, that's great. The stress is removed. You go in a new set of eyes. You get to help and mentor new practitioners, young practitioners. You get to just step back, because when you're an S&C or an analyst or a coach or a technical coach, you're immersed in it. You don't necessarily see what you're doing or hear what you're doing or have time for reflection. Whereas we can step in and we can be honest and open and reflect and then step away again. I mean, that's brilliant. Step in and step out as a consultant, whatever you want to call it these days, is fantastic. And I think clubs will thrive off that. I can see that being taken in earnest. I really can. I think that's a way to get experience, the way to get education, the way to get new innovative approaches into a club environment.
And what's your views? We didn't talk about this before, but I'm just gonna ask you anyway. In terms of some of the practitioners or future practitioners that you guys are seeing coming through the university programs, what's the standard like? What's the sort of areas maybe they feel like they need to develop? I know you might not be able to go into too much detail, but what generally, and not just at Solent, but maybe your time in full-time football, some of the people that you see come into the game. I'm just thinking for people listening that are in that position, maybe advice on where they should focus their, whether it's education or their available time and experiences.
For me, I mean, I always tell the students the same thing. You have to get in the environment. You've got to be within it to understand it. I can tell you what it's like, but you need to feel it and experience it. And everybody wants an internship. Everybody wants work experience. Everybody wants a placement. And I mean everybody. So you've got to offer something slightly different. You can't just want something from a football club. So I've been on both sides of the fence. I've advertised and recruited internships at a football club. And I've also been the other side, where I've tried to get student internship placements at a club. So I can see it from both angles. And for me, the ones that stand out well are those that haven't sat on the backside and just gone and shifted through their degree and got to the end of it and thought, I need to do this now. But they've approached it, they've taken ownership of it and said, I can do this, I can offer this. And analysis is a really easy one to go into, because if you haven't had any experience of coding, if you can't feedback, if you don't know Naxport or Sports Code or Huddle or Y Scout, forget it, because everybody will have that, and every football club will want someone who can code, edit, and capture, and they'll be able to feedback, and instantly you've got someone to work with. And that's the key, to have somebody to work with. Internships, mentoring, it's about a relationship, and it's got to work for both angles. As a practitioner, I take them in at Weymouth. We had a great one in Sam Cook last year, who's gone on to Bristol City now. He was hungry, asking questions all the time. Can I help? Can I do this? And it's not me he's got to impress sometimes, it's the players and the gaffer. So he would run around, collect balls. He will put cones out. Is there anything I want? He would ask questions all the time. And you think, cones, balls, is that significant? In the first 2 weeks, yes, it is. Because you know what? This guy's making an impression. He cares. He wants to be part of it. He's asking questions. He's doing things that aren't necessarily related to S&C, but he's helping us. And that's key. You've got to be able to help the football club, I think. And in turn, you get access to all these quality disciplines and quality practitioners and experienced practitioners. Ask questions, for Christ's sake, ask questions. And don't limit yourself. And it kind of links into my transitional period, I think, in different disciplines. Don't limit yourself as an S&C coach. Go and speak to the recruitment side. Go and speak to the coaching side, the technical aspect. What do you need to know to make you employable, to make you better? And I think you have to know all the departments. You really do, to make you. You've got to know their language, their processes. You don't have to go into depth, but you've got to know where they're coming from when you're sitting around a table and discussing player development, player welfare, programming. You've got to know where each discipline's coming from. The only way to do that is to immerse yourself within it.
A few people have mentioned that before in terms of utilizing like the staff that are around you at a club, because essentially there are loads of diverse staff in different roles, and it's probably an underused area, isn't it? That you look around like the club and think I could take a lot from that person or that person, even if they're in completely different roles.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think we may be guilty in it's getting better in academia. The last couple of years, you see it; it's really good. We're now using the applied sort of environment for assessment, for argument's sake. So we align our curriculum and we get authentic assessment through things that they would need to do at a football club. So no one leaves Solent, and I dare say it's the same for most HE establishments. Nobody leaves here without having understood how to operate a VO2 max test, or go and do counter movement jump tests, or code via sports code. They all leave with something they can take into a sport and arena, which is crucial. I think that's the key to it in academia. You've got to have the theory, but you've got to be able to go, how do we apply this? And the only way to do that is to teach it and to give authentic assessment, I believe. So in answer to your question, I think if we throw it back a little bit, you'll see lots more practitioners in academia for that specific reason, to give students the tools they need to go and work outside of once they've graduated. And that's crucial. And if you can get, it's Dom Haynes, he called it pracademic. I know others have jumped on it, but it was the first person that told me about being a pracademic, which is obviously being practical and academic and combining the two. And I think that's what we do very well at our institution. And I think it's important that we have that. We have the theory and the research and the understanding of and learning, great, but take that, shove it in there, and let's have the whole package. And I think you'll see now as well, football clubs are now getting PhD students internships. They're looking at research. I know Will Abbott is very big on it at Brighton. He was actually an intern at Southampton when I was at the football club. And it's great to see him move on and bring research to the table from clubs who sort of 5 or 6 years ago, that was a no-no. It wasn't happening, was it? Everything was, this is mine, and I'm keeping it, and this is our competitive advantage. It generally isn't. Most football clubs do 90% the same things, and it's that little 10% that can help others and improve their practice, which is key. And I think, kudos to Will and everybody else that's in there researching in that applied arena and feeding back into academia.
And then talking about being a pracademic, how's the transition from full-time football? I'm going to say part-time football with a pinch of salt, but you know what I mean. Into your current role with Weymouth. How's that transition been for you?
Well, it's kind of it rolls into one, actually. I don't think you can be. This is only my opinion. I don't think I can be a good educator in a higher education institution unless I'm still walking the walk, or talking the talk, walking the walk, whatever you want to call it. So for me, they combine, and with Weymouth, it's we are a part-time football club, but we are a professional part-time football club in our processes and our beliefs. And so we only have contact time on a Tuesday evening and a Thursday evening, and obviously we play on a Saturday against the likes of Stockport, Chesterfield, Torquay, Oval, big football clubs that have been in the Championship, League One, League Two, big crowds, everything. The club really shouldn't be there, but great, kudos that they are, and we're going to remain there now because through the great work of the teams before and the players before. But the transition is a case of, it's a Tuesday night, it's a Thursday night. So is that doable in an academic's life? Yes, it is. It's a club that makes it doable. So for me, the transition was fairly comfortable. Have I got the time to do it? Yes. Do I want to do it? Yes. Have I got knowledge to do it? Yes. And that's kind of where it came to. We use students. We make sure that there's a link between the two, which is important for Solent as well as Weymouth. So we've just taken on our physio, which is a graduate from Solent, Charlie, which is great for us. So we're identifying new staff as we go, which is a win-win. And I dare say our previous analyst who's just left, actually, was there for 3 years, was an ex-Solent student. So it's a process that works. It's savvy and it's good. So for me, it's just, you've just got to time manage it. That's the crucial aspect. That's the real difficult one, being organized and time manage that appropriately. And in academia, there are tough times. There are times when you're in front of your screen and you're marking and you're feeding back to students. And if you've got a course that's got lots of students on, 200 odd students, then your time is, they want. And in this day and age, it's a consumer market. They want even more. So you've got to be able to time manage, and you've got to be able to organize. And, being the age I am, I've experienced that and how to do that. And it's just something that if you want to be in both, you've got to be able to do it.
And what was like the initial approach going into the club? Because obviously time becomes an issue, doesn't it, in terms of contact time with the players. So we've talked, I had Elliot Turner on not long ago, and Jake Simpson and other people that are involved in so-called part-time programs. And it's just interesting, like the approach that you take. So have you gone in with certain non-negotiables or certain principles that you wanted to put into play with the players, and then sort of seeing what was left in terms of time to see what else you can do? Like, what was your approach first going in?
Well, our first approach was believe it or not, we don't have a training ground. So that's the hard thing with players when you don't have a base. So we have a school 4G pitch from 8 till 10 in the evening. Now, we went in there working on the premise that we are leaving at 9:30, gentlemen. So we are going to do this session here, and our transitions have to be quick in our setup. So one thing the GAF has been brilliant at, and our staff are great at, is the transition, organised from one to the other. So we maximise what we do on our nights that we do it. So we are full on, and I mean full on from 8 when we actually get on the pitch. We can't go on it 1 minute to 8. It has to be 8. So we're ready. We're on schedule. The non-negotiables are you work hard from 8 till 9:30, and we will finish at 9:30. And obviously we collect our data through, we have GPS and so on and so forth, and our sessions are geared around maximising that. So Tuesdays and Thursdays are the boys know the schedule. Monday is generally a Zoom and a recovery, which we put into the players. So we program it, they go off. Everybody has to have a gym membership. That's part of the signing on. So they have to have their own gym, which is great. And to be honest, all of them buy into it because they want to be here, which is really good. Last year was a bit different because we inherited the team. We inherited a double winning promotion team. So and we came in 3 weeks before the season started. So pre-season was done realistically. We just had to sort of come in and manage it as best we could. And slowly but surely, we've now got players. I would say we've probably got 4 players that have been in and around our 16 that maybe start, that are workers and footballers. Last year, probably 10. So we've halved it through recruitment to get players that can train full-time, although we are a part-time model. So on a Wednesday, we may have a small working group of those full-time footballers that come in. So we get a little bit of extra contact time, but a lot of stuff is done online. And the non-negotiables are that we travel right and we do things right. So even if you're a worker, like last year, you're booking the away days. We travel on a Friday. We prepare right. We get coached. We eat in the hotel together. We do analysis. So we do all our bits that will ensure that we've got a chance of competing in this league. So our contact time remains the same, and that's been difficult because you look at the nutrition aspect. We train at a school that has a changing room and a pitch. canteen. Players bring protein shakes, players bring food, players hydrate themselves. They're the non-negotiables that the players know what's happening, know what's coming, and they treat it with the respect it deserves to be recovered for the following day. So they're the types of things that are on board. Everybody's doing gym sessions regardless. They've all got programs, but we do a squad one, and that's a non-negotiable. So we have processes in place to be able to compete, really. And if we took any of those away, we would struggle. Yeah. Without a doubt, because we're up against full-time teams that train every day. But I would say now we have full-time footballers, which is brilliant for us. I don't want to be detrimental to it, but and talk about contracts, but we're evolving as we move. This year is the only year that we've started to sort of look at the off season and reward the players. Off season wasn't rewarded, pre-season wasn't rewarded. The first day of the season is when you got paid, and the last day of the season is when you stop getting paid. Now, if you're a professional, that's a difficult thing to find, sort of 10 or so weeks, 12 weeks with no income. So we're trying to remodel it and make it better, but we'll never compete financially, but we will compete with giving them the best environment we can in a part-time model.
And if there was a bit more time available or resources available, what would be the sort of go-tos? I know you mentioned there about recovery and canteen and the food and everything. Would that be what you'd want to add to the program, or would there be other aspects that you'd want to add?
I think for us at the moment, it would be to have our own home. I think that's the key to moving forward, because we borrow places at the moment, and that's not ideal. Although we're at a school at the moment in Canford School, which is where, funnily enough, when I worked at AFC Bournemouth, that was our training base at the school, and that's fantastic. Got a pool, got a gym, got grass pitches, all the things that you need to have a very good program. So that's perfect. And I think for us, it's about finding a location at the right cost that we can do that. And we can have everything, in terms of prehab, in terms of a conditioning area, in terms of a studio, in terms of a pitch, which everybody takes for granted. You don't have a football pitch to train on, you're footballers. So these things are, taken as a given. For us, it's about being cute and being clever with where we are. And if it means adapting and changing, we only actually go to Weymouth on match days. We actually train in Bournemouth because it's easier for the players to be, and it's a venue. So we have to think about that and be quite clever and cute with how we the location of where we are, and certainly to attract players. But one thing we have done, and it's been quite successful, that the manager managed to get a house for those, so our recruitment can be further afield now. So we used to have players that were kind of limited geographically because we train on a Tuesday and a Thursday evening. Now with a house, we had 6 in it last year, a very big house. The club rent it, which is great, and the players can stay there and make it full time. So when we have loan players, they can make it full time. So they can add that. We add that extra Wednesday morning into it. So we're evolving as we go to get extra contact time through things like renting a house, something that the club probably wouldn't have thought of 2 years ago, but with it being in this league, it's a requirement now that we have access to a wider pool of players than the limited sort of geographic elements that we had before, and it's worked very well. So that's that's a stepping stone, Ben, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting hearing things like that, isn't it? Because it's possibly things you don't think about so much when you're not in that part-time environment, isn't it? But yeah, it's running as a full-time environment as well, because you're talking about standards and things that you're putting into play with the players there. And I'm guessing, I obviously don't know the lads, but a lot of players at that sort of level are looking to play above, aren't they, anyway? So you're trying to prepare them for that, aren't you?
Yeah. I mean, we obviously pick up players that have been released from academies and so on. Our skipper, Josh McCoy, has been there and done it at championship level, and he's an international. So he drives standards, which is important. And everybody that comes in, Brian, the manager, is an ex-Doncaster player and Welsh international. He drives standards. I've been around the block in the Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two. We understand what it takes to get to the next level. And, you know, we had one player last year that's moved on to League One. He came with us for 26 games, hadn't played. Jacob Mensah hadn't played football for a long, long time. A young lad, centre half. And, you know, I think he'd be the first to say that we've developed him and allowed him to move on to Morecambe. You know, he's jumped up a couple of leagues, and that's perfect for us. That's an ideal situation in an ideal scenario. Do we want to keep players? Yes, we do. But if there's a possibility to move them on and upwards, then we will. And it's important that your environment's right. Everybody talks about culture. You look at the Lions, it's all about culture. You look at Man United, it's about culture. Everything's about culture and the environment and setting it right. And if you get that, then players will want to come to you, which is ideal for us. You know, we want the phone to go. We don't want to have to necessarily go and recruit them and find them. We want them to come to us. And in football, word of mouth is massive. You know, players talk all the time. I listened to the radio yesterday, actually. I think it was yesterday before, and they were talking about Sean Dyche and his mentality around certain things. And he said, misery loves a best friend. And it's true. You know, in football, like, if something's not quite right, you'll talk to someone and they love that. But conversely, if it's right, they'll talk to people too. And that's the crucial element. Word of mouth will tell you that Brian Stark, Louis Langdown, Weymouth Football Club are trying to do things the right way. And their training is good or bad. You know, their methods are great or not so great. So we've got to make sure that the word is great and not so great. So that drives us, I think, massively. Yeah.
And has there been any surprises for you, like either pleasant surprises or not so pleasant, in terms of going into that environment?
Yes and no. I kind of knew it was going to be difficult, but I didn't realize that we it's quite a nice thing. We all muck in. It's quite a nice thing. All the players muck in, the staff muck in. You wouldn't believe some of the things that we need to do and have to do. I mean, we've got a kit man in who's brilliant, and he's actually remodeling our change rooms. So the kit man who's I don't want to be detrimental, but it's not a paid position. But he's unbelievable. He is 24/7. He's remodeled our changing rooms. This is the kit man that you would assume collects a kit, cleans a kit, travels and does everything. He's built all new cupboards and all new changing room facilities. He's forever uploading pictures on WhatsApp of ground improvements that he's done. He's the guy that's on there getting nutritional supplements. And we're like, oh, thanks, Greener. I mean, he's unbelievable. But that's the type of level you need at this football club. People that are going to go above and beyond. And because apart from the manager, all the rest of us are full-time employees of another establishment. So we have to muck in, which is great. I expected that to be the case, and what it is. The thing that I didn't expect was the level of fitness and commitment that I'd get from them. I thought we were going to have a difficult time in making these players fit, but we're not at all. You know, that this day and age, there isn't a footballer in terms of our recruitment and what we've inherited. There isn't a player there that you would classify as needs a lot. You know, they're fit. They're fit players, football fit, which is fantastic. It gave us a real good foundation to move forward from. And I found it's fairly easy. The ones that can't do it naturally disappear. They can see it. In you know what it's like in a football environment, Ben, in training, if you're continuously the lowest in terms of the fitness ability, and you're the lowest in terms of running meters, high intensity meters and so on, and you're breathing out your backside, it's not just you that notices, everybody else notices. But you know, so a lot of people take it upon themselves to say this isn't for me, which was a surprise for me, because in football you try and stay as high as you can for as long as you can generally, whereas some of these players have said, I can see that I've not quite got this. And that was a surprise to me. It wasn't what, you know, we've not had to ask people to leave and have those horrible conversations. They've kind of looked at it and saw, I just can't physically do this, so I'm going to step down a level or two and carry on with my football career. So that was a surprise, and the nice surprise is that players are, you know, they're physically fit, which is nice. It gives a good start point. So yeah, and they're open to things, you know, things like analysis. You know, we've got full-time analysts, which is great, and they're open to it. They want to see it. They want to know about themselves, which is ideal for us to be able to give good feedback, to be able to give task-specific roles and responsibilities to players as well. And they can manage themselves and look on that. We have Huddle, so they can look at clips, open conversations with staff and players around actually, maybe I should have done that. What do you think? Is my body positioning wrong? So on and so forth. We've got a group that cares about improvement and wants to do their best for the club, which is ideal.
That has to come from the top down, doesn't it? Like you said before about culture, if that isn't in place at the top, whether it's owner, manager, whoever, then that sort of thing doesn't happen, does it? And I'm sure there's many other clubs, not mentioning any names, but at the similar sort of level that don't have that like in place, do they? Like it just sounds like the culture is there, and whether that's been developed since you guys have got there, or whether that was there before, and it's something that you guys have sort of lifted again. Like it definitely has to come from the top.
Yeah, it has to. You're right. If the standards aren't there from the guy or girl at the top, you're going to struggle. I mean, it's clear when it's wrong, and the players can see that, and that's great as well. When the players can see that something's wrong, I'm not going to talk about past regime because they've had loads of success. They're fantastic, but all I can talk about is when we went in there and how we tried to set up our training and our enthusiasm to train. The key is that the players want to train, and I found that going back to your other question, actually, Ben, that's a key. Sometimes in full-time football, it's the same thing over and over again. We're in Monday recovery, and the lads that didn't play, push them a little bit more. And then Tuesday game prep, maybe we'll do a little bit of game prep, or we just report to the game. Then Wednesday maybe off, then Thursday, whatever model you're doing. We found that you only realistically lose maybe a day in a competitive calendar for us in that week. You probably only lose a day. And you know what? When they arrive, because they've lost that day over a consecutive number of weeks, they actually want to train and they're energized to train, which I found quite surprising. Although we're limited contact time compared to full-time footballers, there isn't this, we're back here type thing that you can get in any football club. When you look at the dynamics of how football is with the subs, the lads that haven't signed another contract, the ones the gaffer wants out, and so on and so forth. There can be difficult times, and certainly if it's monotonous or it becomes, I'm back at the football club, I only felt like I was here yesterday, and we're doing this again. You don't want that, and we don't generally get that, which is great. It's a real surprise because I think a lot of them was their escape as well from work back last year when they were working. It's like, I'm at football, I've got work, I'm an estate agent, I'm a chimney sweep, I'm a plumber. No disrespect to all those trades, but it's not quite the same as playing football with your friends and getting better. So I think that's a pleasant surprise, the fact that when they turn up at 8 o'clock, they're like, bam, I want to play, I want to train, I want to enjoy this, I want to get the maximum out of it, which is nice. So we haven't really had any major issues, even when last year it was a difficult time for us, COVID, difficult time for us in terms of performances until January. We were in the bottom 3 and it was hard graft. We still had people turning up and enjoying the sessions, although the stress of knowing where we were, the realities of being third from bottom in the league at the time. But we still had the commitment, the energy, the enjoyment, and sometimes that was difficult because we're like, did we lose at the weekend? Yes, we did. How have we got an enjoyable atmosphere? And for me, that's difficult because coming in there, you're going, come on, you lot, do you not care about the result? But to be honest, even on the coach on the way back, there's an hour and a half, and you're like down a little bit, you're in the dumps, and then we look at each other going, right, let's go in, let's just get the mood up a little bit now.
Yeah.
Nothing we can do. We can train. We've got to get it right. We've got to put it behind us and move forward. And I think the lads do that very well. And I think that's a big surprise for me that even though you're losing sometimes, for 3-4 games on the spin, in games, but losing, and you come to training and there's still a good feel about it. And I think that's crucial to move forward for any side that's in that sort of bottom half of the table and punching above their weight. To be able to do that is crucial, and that's one thing I've learned. This group can do that, and by hook or by crook or by trial or an error, we've managed to allow that to happen, which is great, and we won't be changing that.
I think it's what you hear from a lot of like real high performing teams though as well, isn't it? Not getting too high with the wins and not getting too low with the losses. Like there seems to be like a consistency there, and always not reverting back to type, but you know what I mean, in terms of keeping consistent throughout a season. So it sounds like there's an element of that going on as well in terms of not the result not mattering, because that's not the case at all, is it? But you revert back to what you do and you do it consistently.
Yeah, I mean, we've got to make it enjoyable, and I think you're right. You've got to do what you're good at and do that consistently well. And we are a bit about team spirit. We have to be when you lose games and when you and around that relegation zone and the stress of it. You've got to be able to still think, how am I enjoying this? How am I going to get this right? How am I going to get it right for the next game? How do we wipe that 2-1 loss in the last minute? On a Tuesday night, go to work on a Wednesday, get up and be ready to go again on a Thursday. If it's not an enjoyable environment, then it's going to be hard to get people to work at the level we need them to work.
Yeah, definitely. Just before we jump on to some of the quick fire questions on the end, Louis, I was going to ask, I just thought I would put this one in just because it's quite relevant at the moment in terms of the Olympics. I don't know how much you've watched of it, but I just thought it'd be interesting just to see if you have watched any of the Olympics, and also if there's any sort of takeaways and reflections maybe on your time in full-time football and even your role now, looking at some of the Olympic sports and the way they act, so they prepare, maybe the coaching. Is there anything that sort of stands out for you in the experience of watching what the athletes are doing over there at the moment?
I'll watch any sport, and to be honest, my younger daughter, she's not the most sporty or interested in sports, but we've been staying up late and watching the Olympics, and we've been loving it. And the triathlon, absolutely loving the triathlon. The false start made me giggle a little bit, and I thought, how did they get over that? And then you think, well,
how good was that?
Oh, brilliant. I was like, really? How's that happened? They've had years and years to practice this, and that's happened. And then you put yourself in their position and think, how do I get over that false start, get back out the water? Well, you've kind of only got that one event to worry about, so you've got to. And I think for me, sports psychology is something that's underestimated. I used to say that the sports psychology sort of emanates from the top. Neil Warnock was brilliant at it. I don't know whether he knew he was good at it, but he was brilliant at it. So I assume he knew he was good at it because he continued it. For me, sports psychology is a huge area, and you can see it in the Olympics all over. Football's not quite there yet. We bounce off each other in a team of 25, and there's that camaraderie and things like that, and you can get away with a certain element of clouding what's gone wrong, and making jokes out of it yourself or with other people. Whereas in the Olympics, I mean, it's there, it's do or die, which I've absolutely loved it. And learning new sports is great. And you think, I remember watching the triathletes, and a great British one, Le Month, I think it was in front in the swim. What a swim, 20 seconds behind the men's time in the swim in horrendous conditions. You think, wow, this is the bit between the teeth. And then you watch it all unfold, and Taylor Brown ends up getting a puncture, but freewheels it. And I was thinking, right, was that design, or was that by chance? Did she just freewheel it, or was she going to change at a certain point the tire? And I was thinking, right, I want to hear what she's saying about this at the end. So I kind of intrigued as to what she did it. But that was instinct for her. Great interview. The three of them come together at the end, and there was genuine love and compassion for each of them. And they're competing against each other. Weird. I found that weird, but lovely. I thought, right, these are competitors, but they've actually got a team ethic about them, which is really good. I know there's a relay event. I'm not the biggest triathlete going, and my knowledge of triathlon isn't great. But I know there's a relay, so there has to be a team ethic involved in it. But for me, Olympic sports is that individual element to it, and it's like, you versus somebody else. And I've always found that really fascinating, that dichotomy there of just like, right, it's just us. And I've got a trainer, I've got a coach, all these things, but it's do or die situation. And how do we overcome? I think for me, watching the Olympics, you have tactics that change and evolve during the event. And I find that fascinating, absolutely fascinating. How do they change? Is there a design to this new strategy, or is there a tactic they've understood and need to evolve and move? But some weird and wonderful events, mate, and I've absolutely loved them. For me, I think the more you can learn from other sports, the better. And I tell that to the students all the time. The processes that you might have in terms of improving force, or making yourself more flexible, or understanding tactics, or giving yourself the capacity to run as a wing back in football, and giving yourself the ability to do that. Yeah, great. They're all processes. We can transcend them. I knew nothing about diving. I mean, we spoke before about my work at the EIS. I knew nothing about platform diving and springboard diving, but that was irrelevant. I knew how to train somebody to ensure that they were meet the game demands of their sport. but I knew nothing about diving. And I actually loved learning about it on the spot, their psyches, their characters, the coaching element, that, you know, it's such a different culture to football. And I think if we can take anything away from it, it is immerse yourself in another sport. Go and find another sport, another culture. Boxing is fascinating as well. The amount of times I've had difficulty trying to tell a boxer not to go on these long 10K runs at a methodical plod. And then they say, yeah, but that's how we lose weight. No, it's not, pal. It's not. It really isn't. It's not the most effective way. And then listening to guys in the EIS sort of say, well, the psyche is in boxing that you do long runs, and it gives you the tools to in the dying rounds to get through it. And you go, right, okay, so we've got to weigh this up now. Yeah. I know physiologically it's the wrong thing to do, but psychologically, if the guys think it, then we'll introduce it. But we'll introduce it in the program where it doesn't really affect our day, or it doesn't affect the other elements of the training that we want to do. So being able to take the history and the culture of the sport and allow these things to happen for some of these athletes so they feel like this is the right thing, and it doesn't affect your training aims and objectives. I think it's a really cool thing and a really good thing, and it's a unique thing to each sport. So for me, to take it away from football, it's, you know what, you don't have to be in football to help football clubs and help football players. You can go and find some other information, some great techniques, and some cool ideas, and bring it back to football. And I think we should be doing that. Football tends to have all the income, all the money, all the resources, but doesn't always have the most innovative approach. And I'm not saying innovative is the way forward. You know, I think you can go back 10 years now. People are going back to old ways of doing things and going, actually, this is a really cool way. Yeah, there was nothing wrong with this, but we changed it because someone else did a model that was successful. So I'm not saying innovative is always the way, but it's great to have something slightly different from a different culture, a different aspect, and bring it to support what you're trying to do.
Yeah, it's being open-minded, but at the same time, critically thinking, isn't it? Like not just putting something in play because it is going to look innovative or it's going to look different. But if you critically think about it and you want to, you think it fits at the right time.
Yeah, I always think about this with the activation work. When the TheraBands came out, I can't even remember the date it came out, but one team did it, and I think it was either Man City or somebody in the Champions League, and they did it, and then everybody a week later was doing it on the pitch, the glute band. Forget the fact that you've been using the mini bands in your own changing room, activating anyway before you come out. But it was the thing to do. It was the same thing to do. So everyone got in their circle with their activation bands and probably overactivated everything on their lower limb. But there you go. It was the thing to do, and you latch onto it because it was successful. But you've got to be a little bit better than that, maybe, than just jumping on. But you're right, critical thinking. And I think going back to the point about Will Abbott and the likes that are doing research in the applied environment in football, that's where they come in, and that's where they can help us. As looking at good practice and so on.
Definitely. Maybe we'll move it on to some of the quick fires on the end now. That was absolutely brilliant. But we'll move it on to some of your biggest influences on your career so far. Is there any sort of standout names for you that have influenced your career?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's the early ones. They always influence you, those early ones, because like I said about Halsey, and I said John Harbin and Ian Dowie, they were my first experiences of football, and especially in that elite environment. So for me, they stick with me all the time. And it's like, for me, understanding football was crucial. To be able to talk to Ian Dowie and him talk to me, a guy that's not played football at a high level, a guy that's got a degree but hasn't done anything in the game whatsoever, and we're there sat around a table talking about football, having breakfast, talking about football. And the fact that I could hold that conversation was really important to me, and he was a massive influencer on timing, on being punctual, leadership, management. He was huge, and I think they were all huge because I knew nothing. I knew nothing. I had an idea of what I might want to do. I had an idea of what I might like to do. But these guys were huge influences. And John Harbin had a rugby background, and he was massively important. One, because I respected him. Two, because he gave me an opportunity. And three, because he helped me.
Yeah.
There's the opportunity, but you won't fail at it, Louis, because I'll help you. And he supported me. So they're the types of influences that are really crucial for me anyway. So it's always those earliest people. And then funnily enough, at university, there's someone who influenced me again because they gave me an opportunity. Martin Skivington. I failed to get in. Not a sob story. I failed to get in the armed forces as a 17, 18, 19-year-old because I snapped my cruciate ligament a number of times. And I kept saying it was too lax. And I remember walking around Southampton in a complete and utter state because I'd got the information for the third time that I wasn't going to get in. And I'd been away to different things, Purbright, so I tried to get in the RAF, then Camford, loads of different places to try and get in. And I walked off the streets into Solent, just walked in and went, is there a sports course? And I got shifted up to Martin Skivington's office, who was at the time looked after the course. He said, yeah, when do you want to do it? I said, well, I played football and he knew me from Eastleigh. We kind of knew each other and he set me up. And he was a big influence on me because he showed me that I could do something that I probably wouldn't have done. I'm not the most academically gifted student. I never was. I'm not the brightest bubble. And I thought a degree was well out of the equation for me. And he proved that it wasn't. And so he's a big influencer on what I've done. But ultimately, I think that influences are wherever you go. Yeah. Wherever you are, there's always someone that can help. And there's always someone that knows something a little bit more than you. But for sure, Halsey and John Harbin were the ones that showed me I could go from here to there. And Simon Wilson, he's actually a friend of mine, but he's back in the day, he showed me how to be an analyst a little bit better. Michael Edwards, who's a sporting director at Liverpool, we were analysts together at Prozone, and I'm watching his career. I would say he's an influence on me by the way in which he's navigated his way to the top, and his single-mindedness and his approach to bettering himself and his understanding of the game and how to work with stakeholders. So I would say he's an influence without knowing he's an influence, because he's a pal. You don't necessarily tell your pal that he's an influence on you, do you? But yeah, I would say that my earliest ones are really all emanate from Crystal Palace days.
Real. And then what would you say your biggest strength is as a practitioner?
Strength or weakness, because these could be one or the other. I mean, I've been told previously that I don't have a specialist area, so that everyone says that's possibly a weakness. Not for me. I think a strength is the fact that there are so many disciplines in sports science. Coaching is an art and a science. You've got to have a bit of both. So for me, I think I can position myself in most conversations, which is something that allows me then to say, right, well, I can contribute here. I can help. I can give you some information. I could probably change something, or we can at least come to that critical thinking idea. So I think it's the fact that I haven't pigeonholed myself into one area, and I enjoy all the areas of sports science, which is not necessarily the same for everyone. So I think that's a strength. Being able to help most situations in player learning, I think, is crucial. So that's probably my biggest strength.
Real. And then just finally, in terms of, I always ask about CPD. And by CPD, I could mean a number of different things, whether it's courses, webinars, podcasts. Is there anything that sort of stands out for you? I like to use this section to maybe divert people's attention to something that they might not currently have done, whether it's a course or something, or just generally in terms of your advice on progressing as a practitioner.
Yeah, I mean, there are loads of podcasts and courses. I mean, I really like the Training Ground Guru at the moment, simply because no one else has done that approach to telling us about who's where, what they're doing. And there's some elements in there that, like, he's very good, Simon, at getting information from the likes of Man United around their holistic programming, for argument's sake, or their mental health and how they look after that and so on. So there's bits of snippets there that I find really interesting, and it's not a long read. It's not a long, you don't have to be engaged for very long. It's a quick snap, and then that may divert you somewhere else. So I found his website excellent as a resource. I also think that I know others will probably mention bases more than I do, but for me, it's about getting in a room with similar people and similar mindsets. And I think, obviously, with bases, you'll get some aspiring or some people that want to be sports scientists and accredited sports scientists. So if that's where you want to be, then that's the place to be if you want to engage in those conversations. But for me, I'm not a big fan of certificates. I'm not a big fan of courses, because I think that most people can go on a course and pass these days. Yeah. I think it's about encouraging conversations and getting in people's environments. So for me, like, there's people like Jason Dodd at Southampton, who was unbelievable as a youth team coach, had an affinity with the youngsters, just was able to communicate and have rapport with them, which I found brilliant. Now, I'm not going to read that. You must have a rapport with youngsters on some kind of CPD, but seeing it and visualizing it and going, how have you got James Ward-Prowse to be your friend? And then when he's done something wrong, you've managed to, industrial language, bollock him a little bit, and he still likes you. I mean, that's unbelievable. There's something there, and he could get any one of those boys at that time to go from A to B and navigate the path any way he wanted, but they would get there. And for me, that human side is more crucial than a piece of paper. And people hate me for it because everybody loves a qualification these days, and to get through a HR matrix, you've got to have one. But context and discussion and being able to give examples is so much more than CPD. At my stage, or at someone's stage who's obviously got their degree, masters, and so on, and everything. There's always another one to do. There's a PhD. There's always another one to go for. But in terms of improving yourself quickly, and in terms of getting CPD, go find those coaches, go find those technical coaches, go find the recruitment ladies and girls, go and look at the women's program, go and look at Pan Disability program, change what you already know. Yeah, that would be my aspect. And courses can help that. Of course they can develop your knowledge, but they can't tell you or show you, I don't think, these different aspects of programming for different sports.
Brilliant,
long-winded one. Sorry, mate.
No, that was great. And obviously we covered loads of that in the actual podcast as well. We're talking about standing out as a practitioner too. So I realized that, but that was some great advice, some great stuff covered in that as well. So I really appreciate you coming on and being so open with what we've discussed. And I hope people have taken plenty from it. But if they want to keep up to date with what you've got going on, you work at Weymouth, maybe the stuff at Solent as well, like where would you direct them?
My Twitter feed's really easy. It's at Lou Langdown. You can email me at louis.langdown@solent.ac.uk if you want to pick up any of these sort of discussion points that we've come on. So really easy, two easy ones to get. So yeah, they'll be the easiest ones, I think, Ben.
Perfect, mate. Well, thank you very much for coming on. I'll be looking out for the Weymouth results for the season ahead. So best of luck.
Up the terrors.
No, thank you very much, mate. I really appreciate it, and let's stay in touch.
No worries. Keep up the good work, Ben. Top man.